Cody, I was completely shocked this morning when 2 jurors were excused. I mean, we started the morning thinking, okay, we only need 1 more juror to be seated. That can't take that long, right? Well, initially, we thought that it was going to happen right away in the morning, and then 2 jurors were dismissed.
I mean, this is a day of reckoning for Sean P. Diddy Combs, and something that we were hypothesizing before we finally were hearing the words that he was saying was that he may, in fact, point out the victims in this case and apologize. I mean, I believe we talked about that just minutes ago, and here he is doing just that. I'm live in the Southern District of New York, where right behind me is that courthouse inside closing arguments, you guys, and it's the defense. Mark Agnifilo is up to bat, and we have an all-star panel of guests to talk about it. I'm going to ask you about that one, Will. What are you thinking? I mean, domestic violence plays a huge role in this case, but he's not charged with it. So is that difficult for jurors to kind of parse out when they're in the deliberation room? This extradition hearing was something to be seen. I will tell you, when Bryan Kohberger arrived into the courtroom, he was wearing a red jumpsuit. He had his hands cuffed, and you could have heard a pin drop. All eyes were on him. Bob, today is Judgment Day for Ruby Franke and her partner in business and crime, Jodi Hildebrandt, here at the Washington County Courthouse in St. George, Utah. You've heard the story before. Last August, the pair were arrested after a young boy broke free from duct tape shackles and called 911.
You know what, Jesse, this is one of those cases where we have updates literally minute by minute. So when our photog was outside and saw Mangione come inside, you know, he had that little scuffle, he yelled a bit and was even a little bit violent. That happened, and moments later when he comes into the courtroom, nothing. I am telling you, this man walks inside, stone cold face. He's surrounded by about 10 different officers. And of course, he's wearing that orange jumpsuit that says DOC on the back of it. And he's got his handcuffs in front of him, the belt attached. But this guy looks, you know, like he doesn't even care. Honestly, what it reminded me of is when you're in high school and you're looking at the clock, kind of waiting for the bell to ring. That was him waiting for this hearing to begin, just kind of looking around, you know, didn't really care much.
So let's finally bring on today's guest. It's a friend of the show who just happens to be Kodak Black's defense attorney himself, Bradford Cohen. Thanks for coming on Scandal with us today. And let me start by asking, how's your client feeling right now?
He's feeling better now that he's out. Everyone always feels better when they're out.
Wow, these allegations are just really shocking and tough to talk about, but I do want to understand any sort of legal implications that there may be. So let's bring on today's guest. It's trial attorney Ben Chew, who a lot of you probably recognize from repping Johnny Depp in a little trial a lot of us followed a couple of years back. So Ben, thanks for coming on Scandal with us today. And I guess let's start with all of that because you were there front row for this trial that the world over watched, and everyone was really interested basically because we all knew Johnny Depp from the movies, the red carpet, but to see behind closed doors, that's really what got people interested. And now here with Hayden Panettiere, a lot of us know her from her movies or TV shows or whatever it may be, and she's kind of giving us a look behind the curtain of an allegation, you know, the seedy underbelly of Hollywood. So I guess to start, what are your thoughts about all of that?
Yeah, it's great to be with you again.
Oh my God, going through and reading this autopsy, it is a grim photo, as you're saying, like 9 gunshot wounds. Also, I just keep thinking about them sleeping in their bed because this happened 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. They're asleep. Their kids are down the hall.
Right down the hall, yep.
And if that wasn't enough, Monique, the 9 gunshot wounds, there's 7 more from Spencer. And this is interesting. You pointed out that Monique happened to the right side of her body.
Yes.
Spencer, it's on the left side, right?
Yeah.
So then on the counter side, if I'm Kylie's defense team, I'm wondering if you would say something like, okay, this woman, the plaintiff here who's bringing on this lawsuit, she clearly knows that Kylie Jenner is a millionaire. She at one time was listed the world's youngest billionaire. You know, she's got a lot of money in the bank. Maybe she's just coming after Kylie for all of that money. Is that something that Kylie's team would be thinking about?
Yeah.
A decade from the time they're married to when she's killed. So why now? I mean, is it possible that there was some sort of trigger? Is that something investigators would want to pinpoint why this happened when it did?
I do think why now is probably important.
There's such an abuse of power here. How does it go from someone who's supposed to be your teacher, you know, teaching you whatever you may be learning in the 5th grade classroom setting? How does it go from that into crossing the threshold of something so inappropriate like the allegations we've seen here?
Well, that's what makes this particularly horrifying.
The first witness I confirmed is going to be Patrick Clancy himself, who in the wake of these deaths came forward and said, "This isn't my wife's fault. I forgive her. She was going through a mental break."
The podcast host says picking a jury has been a challenge.
I heard at least one person say, "I'm a mom. I can't do this. I have to go." And she was excused. Other people literally brought in boxes of tissues with them, and they were crying as they went up in front of Lindsay Clancy and said, "I just can't do this." She did this to get him out of the house. She clocked how long he would be gone so that she could kill her kids, murder, they say. And then the defense, I mean, I really wasn't surprised with the emotion that Kevin Reddington came forward with, just because he's been covering this case for, almost 3.5 years at this point. And I mean, the defense and even Patrick Clancy himself has been really steadfast that this was a mental break with Lindsay Clancy. This isn't cold-blooded murder.
With Dr. Catherine Ramsland, it is a non-starter. I reached out to her personally, and I got a one-line email that said I will not be discussing the Bryan Kohberger case, and other reporters I spoke with received similar emails.
What's up, guys? Sierra here to talk more celebrity news, and today's topic of conversation is Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. That's all anyone has been able to talk about since Blake filed that bombshell lawsuit last month. And she says there were questionable acts by Justin Baldoni on the set of their movie, and she even calls it sexual harassment. So let's start at the beginning. Blake Lively, you know her and love her. Gossip Girl, sister of the Traveling Pants, wife to Ryan Reynolds, a beloved star. Then there's Justin Baldoni, who happened to be her co-star in the movie we're talking about, It Ends With Us. But not only is he her co-star, he's also the director of the movie, and he works with the studio that put it out. So he's a major player in all of this. Now, according to Blake's lawsuit that was put out just last month, Justin Baldoni was super inappropriate on set. And if you go through and read her lawsuit, she kind of lays it out. That's things like asking about her relationship sexually with Ryan Reynolds behind closed doors. He's asking about this on the set. A different instance, he apparently walked into her trailer while she was half naked. Not a great look. And then additionally, there was a scene where they were supposed to be making out, and Justin Baldoni started biting her lower lip. This is not something that Blake was into. She did not consent to it, and she said it was a red flag that there was no intimacy coordinator on the set. So all of this is happening in late 2023, early 2024, about a year ago now at this point. Jump to August of 2024, and that's when the movie premieres. And things are a little bit crazy at that point too, because the two stars of the movie don't even walk the red carpet together. That's right, Blake Lively took photos with her husband with other co-stars, but she wasn't even on the carpet at the same time as Justin Baldoni. So we all knew that there was some trouble in paradise, or so it seemed. Speaking of Blake Lively on the red carpet, you know she always looks amazing. Her outfits are top notch, and so is her makeup. And makeup is something I can talk about a lot, and I actually really want to share with you my new favorite thing. It's this. It's from L'Oreal, the Glow Paradise Lip Balm. Let me explain to you why I'm absolutely obsessed with this and just ordered 5 of them on my last order from Ulta. Okay, so I'm a person who likes to wear makeup all the time, whether it be going to the grocery store or going out for drinks. I want it all the time. And the reason that I love this specific L'Oreal lipstick / lip balm is because they have so many different colors, one for every occasion. So I always have one to match my personality, how I'm feeling, and the vibes of the night. But here's the real key to why I'm obsessed with this product, because it moisturizes. This is something you don't often see in a lot of lipsticks. Yes, they have great color and maybe they're long lasting, but they don't moisturize, and in fact, they dry out your lips. That's not the case here. Not only does it have amazing color, but also it moisturizes. I cannot say enough good things about this, and I want you to try it too. If you go to their website, L'Oreal.com, make sure to use our promo code LCNews, and you will get 100% off on your first order. So you can try it, and you can write back and say how much you love it too. All right, back to talking about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. At the time of this premiere in August, Blake alleges that he started this smear campaign to ruin her reputation. And if you were following along with any of this on BuzzFeed or here on Law and Crime, you may have heard about all of this, that Blake was difficult to work with on the set. This was kind of a rumor going around at the time. And now in her new filing, she says that was Justin Baldoni's team cooking up a story about her in order to silence her so that she wouldn't file a lawsuit or tell anyone about these sexual assault allegations. Jump to December when Blake Lively files this lawsuit and she unleashes all of these sexual harassment allegations against Justin Baldoni. Everyone's talking about it, including us right here, and a little publication called the New York Times. They write an in-depth article about all of this, and Justin Baldoni is not happy. In fact, he files a libel lawsuit against the New York Times. He also says he plans to countersue Blake Lively, but she's already busy with her second lawsuit against Baldoni, this time a federal one. And the reason why we're talking about this case today is that Blake Lively's team has come forward and said, we want to take this to court. We have backed up concrete evidence that these aren't just allegations, this is fact, this is what really happened. And Blake Lively has been so vocal about it, saying that this is unacceptable for her, anyone on that particular set, or anyone at all. She says she's standing up for women and men alike who've had to deal with sexual predators. Where this case is going from here, unclear, but I can tell you one thing, I want to keep following it and see what happens. So make sure to check back with us, like and subscribe, and you definitely will hear the latest as soon as it comes out. A high school senior slapped with more than 300 charges for being the ringleader of an alleged sextortion scheme. Prosecutors say this teenager targeted his fellow classmates, pretending to be a beautiful adult film actress. He allegedly coerced these children into sending explicit photos and then blackmailed them for hundreds of dollars. This is Scandal, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Sierra Gillespie. Today's case to me sounds like an episode of Black Mirror. Children are coerced into sending explicit photos and videos of themselves, things that are really private. They only send them because they believe they can trust the person at the other end of the message. But instead of this being some beautiful romantic relationship, they've been catfished by someone now extorting them for money and power. But here's where the major twist comes. This mystery catfisher is not a phantom internet villain, but it's the person sitting next to them in AP history. Because today's defendant is a high school senior from Western Pennsylvania who originally faced hundreds of charges for this alleged scheme. His defense now claims he's a high schooler. He belongs in high school, not jail. But prosecutors have charged him with a very adult crime. If you're interested in cases like this one, we're talking top true crime news, body cams, interrogations, and deep dives into some of the most scandalous of cases, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss anything. Now, on to the case of Zachariah Myers. Today's scandal takes us to Peters Township, Pennsylvania. It's about a half-hour drive from Pittsburgh, and that's also home to Peters Township High School, where 18-year-old Zachariah Myers was a senior. And from his photo, Zachariah looks like a normal teen. According to his high school roster, he was on the varsity volleyball team. From afar, he just looks like a normal kid, finishing up his last year at home before heading off to college in the fall. But that's not the trajectory Zachariah is on anymore. He's actually been missing a lot of classes for a while now because legally he can't attend them. No, instead, Zachariah is being held in jail without bond, facing a slew of really serious charges. And the alleged victims in this case are all Zachariah's high school classmates. This case takes us back to December 5th, 2025, and that's when Zachariah allegedly began this sextortion scheme. For those of you unfamiliar, sextortion is just a facet of extortion. And we're going to talk about this more in depth during our interview, which, by the way, please stick around for. Our expert guest today is just that, really, truly an expert who gives some great insight into some really chilling allegations. But essentially, sextortion is extortion with sexually suggestive content involved, meaning a person will coerce a victim into sending explicit photos or videos, and then, once they have them, use these images, videos, whatever, as blackmail, extorting the victim for something, usually money. In this case, prosecutors say Zachariah targeted at least 21 victims, ages 14 to 17, and for his form of extortion, Zachariah allegedly requested that these victims pay him $500 or else.
But before all of that happened, prosecutors say Zachariah masqueraded as someone else. Specifically, he acted as an adult film actress from the Netherlands. He called her Claire Mauve. And he used social media like TikTok or Telegram to reach out to his fellow classmates. So he pretends to be this woman, Claire, and allegedly starts talking to these kids. And eventually, he builds up enough rapport that he coerced the students into sending sexually explicit photos or videos. The court docs read in part, quote, Myers was able to deceive and coerce juvenile males into sending explicit pornographic images and videos of themselves. And again, these children believe that they're sending these images to a beautiful woman who's giving them attention. She's really nice. She seems sweet. And after these kids send off the images, suddenly the flip switches. All of a sudden, Zachariah reveals he's not actually this glamorous film star. Instead, the victims have been catfished, meaning they've been tricked. Their explicit photos, which by the way, they're all child pornography because the victims are all under the age of 18. These images or videos are now in the hands of a predator and their classmate. Court docs allege that Zachariah then extorted these students, demanding that they pay $500 or he'll expose them literally. Now, at least one of these students ignored this request and just simply wouldn't pay. According to prosecutors, Zachariah then sent a naked photo of this victim to his sister. And if that wasn't shocking enough, there are additional allegations that Zachariah coerced a 15-year-old student into having sex with other adult men on camera. This is according to NBC News. Zachariah allegedly forced the boy to pose as an adult man on a, quote, LGBTQ dating application to, again, quote, engage in specific sexual acts with adult men. And this allegedly happened inside a school locker room where the men allegedly raped this 15-year-old boy. And by the way, I have to keep saying allegedly because these are just charges. They're allegations at this time. There has been no convictions, but this was allegedly recorded and sent off to Zachariah. Zachariah reportedly told the boy he had to do this, had to have sex with adult men in a locker room for Zachariah to, quote, keep my silence. Now, there were more instances that allegedly happened inside this wrestling locker room. According to NBC News, this happened on at least 6 occasions when a 15-year-old student was coerced into secretly recording his teammates in, quote, various states of undress, including having only underwear on. Now, thankfully, investigators were able to track down Zachariah through his email addresses, the ones that he used to register for some of the accounts, and through his IP address. Now, at first, Zachariah faced over 300 charges, including trafficking in minors, sexual extortion, intercept communications, corruption of minors, child sexual abuse material, unlawful contact with a minor, sexual exploitation of children, and criminal use of communication facility. Now, just last week, Zachariah's charges were bumped down to 67 in total. Still a pretty large number, but prosecutors say they're still covering all of their bases with these charges. Washington County District Attorney Jason Walsh told the Trib Live, quote, nothing was pared back. We just cleaned it up a bit. It was more of an amendment than a move to withdraw charges, to avoid duplication for sentencing purposes and to align the counts with units of prosecution. It was just cleaning up the docket. He went on to say, it's more common than you think. It's maybe not with this many victims to one individual, but we see it all too frequently. But Zachariah's defense is considering the change in charges a win. They told the Trib Live, at this point moving forward, we start to get discovery and look at the evidence, and we're excited to do that and actually see how credible this evidence is. Now, we're still so early on in this case, but there are a few things I need to note. Number one, Zachariah is still being held without bond. At a hearing just last week, his defense team argued he should be released. They say, he's only a high schooler. I mean, he needs to belong in high school, not in county jail. But the judge disagreed, citing the severity of the crimes. So for now, Zachariah is still being held without bond. Number two, I wanted to note that these allegations have shed light on some alleged oversight at the school. I mean, if there are these explicit photos and videos that were recorded in the high school locker room, that's a major violation. There are children in there, some who are undressing, maybe they're showering after practice. That should not be involved with cameras or videos or anything of the like. Now, the school says cameras, phones, they're not allowed in the locker room, but it's something that attorneys are now calling to the forefront, questioning the policies that were in place at the time of the alleged incident. So a lot ahead there. But speaking of the school, by the way, the district has released a statement. It reads in part, quote, "Earlier today, the Peters Township Police made the district aware of an ongoing investigation related to a student at Peters Township High School. The police have indicated that there is no immediate safety risk to our schools, and we will continue to cooperate fully with the investigation. The safety and well-being of our students, staff, and families remain our highest priority, and we appreciate all the efforts of the Peters Township Police in this matter." All right, wow, there's a lot to unpack in this case, a lot of pretty crazy allegations. So let's bring on our expert guest to walk us through it all. It's trial attorney Daniel Zulkowicz. Daniel, thank you for coming on Scandal and talking to us about this. And honestly, for me, I'd never really heard about a sextortion case. I've never reported on one before. So for any of our viewers who are unfamiliar, can you just describe to me or explain to me what sextortion really is?
Sure. Sextortion is a subset of extortion. It is where somebody pretends to be somebody else and through deceit or some other means is able to obtain nude or intimate photographs and videos of the third party. They will then use those videos or images to try to extort money or influence over that person.
So, a very specific brand of extortion and a really extreme one, too. I mean, the allegations here are pretty wild, starting with the fact that we have a defendant who technically is an adult. I mean, he's 18 years old. However, he's a senior in high school, basically a child at this point. I mean, that was shocking to me that we essentially have a kid who's the defendant here. Is that something you've seen before, a child being involved?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's become very prevalent nowadays in high school where there are multiple sextortion cases that take place. You find it happen often. There's a case in New York that took place in September. There's a case in New Jersey that we're actually involved in that went to criminal. It's very easy to get access to people you know because mainly sextortion takes place through social media accounts. So a lot of times you're friends with the people, you know who they are, you know what their friends are. So you're able to create pretty much a fake profile. In this case, it was a persona of a female, which you find often. And you just start a conversation. And unfortunately, a lot of high school boys do not have real world experience and they do just end up talking back and forth. They feel comfortable and they make one mistake, unfortunately. They share an intimate image of themselves and then the abuser in this situation has all the power and they can continue this level of harassment like you saw in this situation.
Okay, it's so crazy because I think a lot of us have all watched that show on MTV Catfish. And so often when it's a catfishing situation, it's not someone you know. It could be, I'm here in Boston, it's somebody in Tennessee who's talking to me. But in this case, and what you're talking about, it could be that they're literally in the same, I don't know, English class, that he knows, okay, this is, my friend Alex, let's say. I know that he likes football. I could start DMing him about football under this alias account because I know him. I mean, does that help the defendant in a way? And I mean, I guess I say help. It shouldn't because it's a negative thing, but that they know the person in real life and can kind of play on their hopes or desires, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the elements of sextortion is that you have to put the fear in the victim that they have something to lose. So a lot of times when you first started hearing about these cases was about 10 years ago, and it were people from India, it was people from other countries that were randomly just sending out thousands of friends requests on social media, trying to find different victims. And what they would end up doing is they would then say, okay, I have your image. They would take a screenshot of all of their friends, of their coworkers, and they say, unless you pay me $100 or some really small fee, we'll have no choice but to send these pictures. And so the person will start sending them $50 at a time. And it's literally just a numbers game at that point where they're sending thousands of friends requests hoping to find somebody. Unlike a lot of traditional sexual harassment, sex abuse cases, this actually predominantly targets males compared to females. There's a lot of research cases out there about this. So going back to your question, does it matter whether the perpetrator knows the person? It does because they actually know very specific details about the individual, like who their best friends are, who their parents are. So rather than shooting at a dark at like a friends list of 100 people, they're able to say, unless you do a certain act, I'm going to send it to your mom. I'm going to send it to your best friend. I'm going to post it up in the high school that you go to. It's really an intense level of psychological harassment that takes place with these individuals.
This is like a horror movie. You describing all of this. And honestly, in the court documents too, there was one of the students who was being sextorted, let's say. And he said, I'm not going to pay. I guess the defendant said, okay, give me $500 or I'm sharing this naked photo of you, a child, by the way, which would be child pornography. And the student said, no, I'm not, no. So then, according to the court documents, the defendant sent this explicit photo to the other student's sister because he would know, okay, you know, they're siblings. I know they go to the same school. I've got her Instagram. I'm going to send her a DM or whatever it may be. That I cannot even fathom my sister having to open up her DMs and see something like that of me. I mean, so it will show though that the defendant is willing to, it's not empty threats, rather. He really will do all of these things. Is that an important part of this case?
I mean, to me, it is because it definitely shows the malice and ill will that the defendant in this case has. But take it a step further, you really don't think about the mindset of the victim. They believe that they're having a conversation just with another female. They don't think this will ever get back to anybody. I mean, people think, unfortunately, that it's a private conversation between two people. And now imagine it turns out that this private conversation as a 15-year-old, as a 14-year-old, your most intimate thing that you could have at life at this point is about to be shared with someone, your loved one, with your parents, with your sister. I mean, the psychological toll, unfortunately, you read time and time again, there's a higher suicide rate in young teenage males because of this sort of rape, because they don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to go to. I mean, I would want to have this conversation with my parents. And unfortunately, it's really important that when you're a victim of a crime in this situation, you have that conversation, you are open up about it. Because a lot of times people have nowhere to go and they don't know where to turn.
And I think about the victims in this case because, according to prosecutors, they were ages about 14 to 17. That's high school for me. And I think about myself during high school. I was not very confident. If there was something like this that happened to me, I would not want to talk to my parents about it, honestly, out of sheer embarrassment, which these people should not be embarrassed, by the way. They're victims of something really serious and obviously illegal. But I can understand putting myself in that perspective. Being a kid, you don't want to talk about that. That's really hard to come to terms with. And maybe that's why there are so many victims, or to your point, you mentioned a couple of other cases you're working on. So many cases because people don't want to come forward. But I don't want to glaze over something that you mentioned here specifically. The idea that these children were speaking with someone they thought, in this case, it was a adult film actress from the Netherlands. They thought that this was a woman. They, were getting intimate, at least in their conversations, and then eventually did send photos. So is that really how it starts? They kind of get coerced or lulled into this false sense of security. There's this girl who really likes me. We're having a relationship. We're going to, exchange pics like you would. I mean, is that how something like this starts?
Yeah, so again, a lot of times it starts with an anonymous friends request, either in Facebook or Snapchat message. It's almost always begins with social media. And you'll receive a request from somebody that is generally of the other sex. But a lot of times, if you're a part of the same sex community, you'll end up getting requests on Grindr apps or things like that. And the person's always very friendly. They're always impersonating someone that they believe that you would like. And they always start by sharing their own photographs as well. It's not a situation where they just immediately request somebody, and it takes a while. There are a few days sometimes that they'll continue to speak to somebody, and they'll pretend that they like them, and they lull you into a sense of comfort. And then either they'll have you take a video of yourself doing something intimate, or just take one photograph of you doing something intimate. And once they get that hook, unfortunately, what they'll do is they'll continue the level of harassment. A lot of times they'll request more photographs because they'll say, well, I have one photograph. If you don't do it more, I'll end up sharing this one photograph. So you feel pressured into sending additional photographs because you don't know what to do, excuse me. Or in a lot of sextortion, they use extortion, they do request money. You find with the high school kids, it's more of a request to get additional photographs because that's additional leverage, additional embarrassment over them. And because the perpetrators are so young on the other side, a lot of times they're not afraid the way they should be. Because if you deal with people that are strangers, they just go away. Because like I said, it's sort of a numbers game to them, unfortunately. It's a really awful way to describe sexual abuse, but it really is. It was somebody you'll threaten to go to the police. You'll talk about the situation you said where I'm not going to send it to you, so send to parents. And they'll mock them and they'll say, oh, go to the police. What are they going to do? Because they're young and they don't realize how there are real consequences to this.
And thankfully, there are real consequences here. We have a student defendant who faces a dozens of charges. Initially, it was hundreds of charges. Thankfully, we're in the end game here. But before we got there, before charges were filed, you talked about photos that were sent. There also is allegations of a video. One of the students, this is according to prosecutors, was 15 years old and allowed adult men to have sexual intercourse with him. Rape really is what it was. Record it and send it to this person. I mean, the photos are crossing the line. The photos are illegal. The photos are wrong. But now the fact that we have this video and it's physical violence involving other people, that to me is just such a level of depravity that I can't even imagine. I can't even fathom, let alone a senior in high school to even think of something like this. So do you think that's something prosecutors will highlight if and when this goes to trial? That not only do we have photos, not only do we have deception, we have this physical violence that happened and we have proof via a recording.
I mean, this is an extreme and horrific example. It is absolutely disgusting. I hope that not only they go after the 18-year-old, but the adult males as well that were in this act. It just shows this unfortunate underground community that does exist on the internet and in dark places and how horrific people can be. I do hope and believe the prosecutors will highlight this. I have to imagine that the defendants and the defense attorney right now are trying to get some sort of plea deal in order, because as far as I'm concerned, he should be put in jail for many years based on what he's done.
I'm also wondering what a motive is in all of this because we talked about money. There was a monetary situation. I guess he would ask the other students, his fellow students, send me $500 or send me more photos or videos or whatever. But like, what is the motive here that you're going after your classmates who, I mean, I went to the same school from kindergarten through senior year. If this is me, if I'm the defendant, I've known these kids literally my entire life at this point. So to go after people I know, your mom's on the PTA or your dad's the soccer coach or whatever it may be, to go after these kids, I mean, was it just about the money? Was it the thrill of it all that you have power over someone? I mean, how do we determine the motive?
There's a lot of different motives that you find. I think a lot of it begins with power, and influence and control. I find a lot of these defendants are not the popular kids that are part of the team. They're either jealous of the people they target. You find a lot of times sports teams are targeted. You don't actually see in this case how all these boys were related to one another, but I have to imagine they're part of either the same club or the same group of friends. And this one individual chose these individuals to target for a reason. One, it's power. One, I have to imagine it started with being able to trick one individual into sending these images, and then they had to, in their mind, to see who else they could potentially get. We've heard defendants say part of their motive is it's happened to them, so they then decide to do it to somebody else. To me, this is a ridiculous motive, obviously, but it's some sort of revenge. I really truly believe at this age, a lot of it's not financial, because candidly, the victims don't have that sort of financial money to be able to turn over in exchange for what's going on. So it has to be some level of depravity and some level of control over individuals they feel wronged them.
And I think that's just so sick. Like the allegations in this case are truly so disturbing. And I mean, I again think about myself in high school. Let me be honest, there were kids in high school I did not like. I was not considering doing something like this. I simply thought, okay, I'm not going to be friends with you. And that's where it ended. I wasn't the most popular girl in high school, but I'm not going to do something like this. I mean, the allegations here are so disgusting. And what's more is according to court documents, this started around December 5th, 2025. And now it ended in February. That is shocking to me. The number of victims that this defendant was allegedly able to rack up over only a couple of weeks. I mean, so it started small and then just like snowballed and grew so big. I mean, what do you make of the timeline?
I mean, I always ask in these cases, where were the parents? I mean, there's a significant investment and amount of time that this individual had to use using technology. It's not like they were out of the house doing this. They were under their parents' roof using technology to go after and target 30 kids at least that we know of. And by the way, these are only the kids we know of. And I imagine the investigator sees his devices and we're able to see what's there. he probably went after a significantly larger number of individuals. So one, where are the parents? Because this was a 3-month investment by this kid who's on his phone, on his devices, trying to target individuals. Two, and I know part of these allegations, I don't know if you're going to get to them later, is that they were recording in the school as well. So where was the school to allow this technology to be taking place? The lack of oversight of what's going on with the students as well. So really, it's a failure because the kid's so young, but it's also a failure of society around this individual that would just allow for him to engage in this conduct over and over again.
Yeah, there's so many questions. The school you mentioned, I know that one of the plaintiffs, or excuse me, one of the victims, their attorneys has come forward and said, okay, it might become a plaintiff situation. Where was the school? Why weren't there no cell phones allowed in the locker rooms at all times? And you also mentioned the parents of the defendant, which he lived at home. He's a high school senior. Of course, he's still living with his parents, and they have to be involved at least in a little bit because the IP address is what helped investigators track him down. I mean, they're probably the ones who set up the Wi-Fi, who figured out, are we going to get Spectrum or Charter, whatever it may be. So can you talk to me a little bit about how they finally tracked him down? I believe it was like usernames, the emails that were associated with it, and the IP address. Would that be a big one?
So that would definitely be a big one. So a lot of times, especially when you deal with younger perpetrators like this, they're not as sophisticated in their targeted attack towards victims. So they'll be using the real devices. They'll be using the real email address potentially. And so let's assume you have Snapchat. Snapchat would have turned over to the investigators the device ID, which would lead you right back to his iPhone. They would have turned over IP addresses, which would have led right back to the parent's home. A lot of times, assume you're using an AT&T cell phone, you can get location data so they can actually track where the student was when he was doing this. There's a lot of digital footprints that are left out there. And when you're dealing with someone so close at home, so young, they really generally do not use VPNs or other advanced devices in order to try to hide who they are. They make it easy for investigators. And really, the hardest part, I think, is to even get the police involved. And once you do get them involved, and they do a thorough investigation, there's going to be a lot of digital evidence they'll have against this kid.
It's kind of a double-edged sword here. The fact that, the internet and social media and online, it's so prevalent that we can have people who are like this and taking advantage. But on the other side of the coin, everything you just pointed out, that we have this digital footprint that can track us back to the alleged perpetrator here, who originally faced over 300 charges. It was since dropped down to around 67 charges. What do you make of that? The fact that at first he faced so many, literally hundreds, and now it's been way vastly bumped down. 67 is still a pretty high number, but what do you make of it?
I mean, I like the number 300 because I really think it's a message for any other perpetrator out there that we're not just going to let you get away with this. Take it though from the people's perspective, when they have to prove 300 counts and the jury has to sit there and go through 300 counts, that's a lot for, it's a high burden for the people to go through. It's a high burden for the jury to sit through. So I can see why they're willing to reduce it. I really don't like the concept that the defense is using this as a victory tour, saying that, well, they overcharged or we were able to go after him. To me, it's really just a sign to say that we have you. We're going to go after you in our strongest counts possible, and we don't want to leave any room for error whatsoever.
I want to ask about the defense too. I've already gone over our time, but this is truly one of the most interesting topics. And one of our viewers actually suggested it to me. It was her high school that this happened. She sent me a DM about it and I was like shocked. So this will be my last question. Thank you for giving us so much time. I'm just shocked about it. So talking about the defense, his defense asked for him to be released on bond or bail, which by the way was denied. But their defense is, this is a senior in high school. He's essentially a kid. He's 18, but he's a kid. He should be, in his high school geometry class. He shouldn't be in jail. What do you make of that? Because he has some pretty serious allegations wagered against him.
Unfortunately, the reason you don't hear about these cases as often as they take place is because of the age of the defendant. And a lot of times they do get away with this because of their age. In a recent case in New Jersey, a senior in high school was able to get away with it because he was 17 and didn't want to prosecute him as an adult. Here, he will be prosecuted as an adult. The back of my mind, when we talk about this case, the one thing I have to imagine the defense is going to present is there has to be some form of other abuse that took place in the past, because to level an individual to have sex with grown men, obviously they had to even find these men to begin with. So I imagine there are a lot of mental issues they'll bring up. They'll try to get sympathy for their client. Another thing the defense may raise is that, well, the IP address is tracked back to the home. How can you prove that he's the one that's behind this compared to the parents potentially? But that being said, you have to imagine once they seized his devices and they saw the overwhelming evidence on his iPhone or his computer compared to his parents, the defense will have no choice but to take a plea, which is the best for everyone. It's best for the victims, so they don't need to testify at trial. And candidly, it's best for the parents of the victims as well, so they don't have to sit there going through it. However, it is very important that the prosecutors make sure that the sentence is large, because otherwise there is no justice for all these victims in this case.
I mean, it's the defense attorney's job to bring up these mitigating factors and, to put forth a defense that is his right as an American. But at the same time, we have all of this digital evidence against him that prosecutors say they have. I mean, I think it's an uphill battle for the defense. Some really serious allegations and a really, terrifying and interesting topic that we talked about today. Daniel, thank you for coming on Scandal with us and walking us through it all.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And that's where today's episode of Scandal leaves us for now. If you have any ideas for a future Scandal episode, please send them our way. Actually, this very episode was a tip from one of our viewers, Nicole. So thank you to Nicole for sending this in. And for the rest of you, please send ideas our way. Our tip line is scandal@lawandcrime.com. And if you want to connect with me personally on social media like Instagram, you can find me at Sierra Gillespie. Thanks for watching today's episode of Scandal. As always, I'm your host, Sierra Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.